dear members and honorable guests. We are happy to have you with us today. Welcome to the first SAR ETA Alpha event of our summer series. Since 2016, the SAR ETA Alpha chapter has aimed to equip its members with the best academic and professional support by granting scholarships and providing help with launching careers and by fostering an inclusive, thought-provoking discussion.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. Today's event will be dedicated to the topic of higher education in the United Kingdom, undergraduate and graduate career prospects, and the Webster experience as a powerful ground to pursue graduate studies in top British universities. We are more than happy to welcome our guests who have been involved in the UK's academic and career life, as well as those who applied to British universities after fulfilling their undergraduate studies at Webster University. After the speech of every guest, we will have a 10-minute Q&A session and advice sharing opportunity from our speakers.
Today, we are honored to welcome Roman Kolpakov, an undergraduate law student at the University of Cambridge, Anastasia Rudkovska, who is pursuing her undergraduate program in political and social studies at the University College London and pursuing career in consulting, and Patricia Paulina Carrer, an undergraduate student from Webster who was accepted by the London School of Economics for the graduate studies in IT management and digital innovation. Now, we are happy to welcome Roman to take the floor.
Hi, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. Before I start, I would like to point out that it is somewhat difficult to talk about Cambridge experience in general. For one, it is a very subjective thing. Everyone has a very different experience of Cambridge depending on their cultural, ethnic, and socioeconomic background. So this is essentially a disclaimer. This is a white guy's experience of Cambridge. So it does not capture everything. And secondly, almost everyone at Cambridge lacks any other point of reference. We have not been to a different university. So it is somewhat harder for us to speak about Cambridge experience in comparative terms. However, I will try to show why I think that the claim that Cambridge is both an academic and a career powerhouse stands. So to put Cambridge into context, let's look at the top rankings, which give a partial picture, but it is a good starting point. So Times Higher Education, Cambridge is third best university in the world. QS, seventh. Guardian, first in the UK. However, this does not fully show the importance of Cambridge. It goes far deeper culturally and historically. And this is not some sort of self-serving sort of perception of this. This is something that I have been persuaded of myself because I am a skeptic, and institutions call for particular skepticism in my view. So yeah, this is an honestly held opinion. I would like to start with careers. So it is definitely true to say that Cambridge treats careers differently than most UK universities, and I would imagine differently than US universities for certain. However, it would be wrong to say that that careers are neglected in Cambridge. The difference is that academics, the university staff will not emphasize it. They will not push internships on you. They will not try to make you do a gazillion things. However, you have fantastic opportunities in Cambridge. You just have to be willing to pursue them. So for once, networking. Cambridge is an incredible place for networking. You start with your classmates. Cambridge consistently puts out best performers in most fields, most prominently politicians, lawyers, judges, actors, scientists. It is a very valuable and irreplicable connection through a shared experience that, it's simply irreplicable. It has an incredible alumni network. Anyone from the UN to Apple. For instance, due to our alumni network, I was able to attend a very, very small scale private talk by a current Supreme Court justice, and he talked to us for an hour and a half on his evening on a Friday. It was spectacular. Such a frank conversation. I've never seen such a frank conversation with a Supreme Court justice, and it was an invaluable experience. So then we have a fantastic career service. It organizes incredible, tailored, low-scale events by senior partners and top executives from major firms. I have personally attended many of them. It is truly spectacular. Um, Top firms go to sort of appeal to Cambridge, which leads to a lot. Cambridge is treated by the sort of the job market by the firms very differently from other universities. In many UK firms, in many international firms, you will have dedicated teams that simply deal with Oxford recruitment. We get disproportionately more events and more attention than any other university in the UK apart from Oxford. And you see that. So, for instance, just a very tiny example, Cat's Law Society, Cat's is my college, St. Catherine's. We are taking out to, on average, 5, 6 course dinners by top UK firms with their partners to just discuss whatever we feel like discussing. It is an incredible level of attention, and it provides you with incredible opportunities for networking. Then there are societies which cover all groups of interest, and if you manage to find one that isn't covered, which I think would be quite difficult, you will always get financial support from the university and your college to pursue that sort of thing. And societies are fantastic for a number of reasons. First of all, they provide specific regional and career interests events that will not be covered by a normal career service. So, for instance, if you are an international student and you have interest in your domestic market, as I had interest in Czech market, there was an incredible opportunity organized by the Czech Slovak Society with the director of the Czech branch of Arthur D. Little, one of the oldest consulting firms in the world. And in general, if you're involved in societies like this, they are sponsored by firms like McKinsey, like Skoda, Volkswagen, anything you want. So you have an opportunity. If you're involved in those societies, you will have an opportunity to reach out to those people, to establish a connection, to get to know the firm from inside. And societies, I would emphasize, are the most important. I would say the most important way in which Cambridge students improve their career prospects, because they are treated very seriously in Cambridge, and almost everyone is involved in them, and most try to get on executive committees. So, for instance, myself, I'm on the executive committee of the largest fundraising organization in Cambridge. I'm the vice president of Oxfam Cambridge University, and I'm involved with the Czech Slovak Society and Russian Society. And this is normal. This is normal, and this is really valued by employers, and I've been told so by the employers themselves. So this is as close as it gets to first-hand experience. Also, I would highlight the Cambridge Union, which attracts. So for those who don't know, Cambridge Union, just like the Oxford Union, is a debating society which attracts the brightest minds of this world. So in September, one that really caught my attention was Bill Gates, but we've had anyone from acting to former prime ministers and presidents, Nelson Mandela, Supreme Court justices, and yeah, anyone you want, all sorts of scientists that I do not know. And you can not only see them in real life, you can engage with them after the discussion. It is truly fantastic. Careers-wise, being in Cambridge is definitely a big boost. Now about academia. It is, as I said, it is difficult to compare. But I would emphasize that there's certainly a difference in emphasis from the USA. In the UK, they are pure, and especially in Cambridge, they are purely focused on your academic potential. Your extracurriculars are completely irrelevant. You can, unless they show that you are truly engaged and you show a very high level of engagement with the subject you're applying for. This is the only way extracurriculars can be useful in Oxbridge environment. The most valuable thing is your academic potential as it relates to the particular subject you're applying for, which brings me on to the thing that unlike in the US, you cannot just sort of come to the university not knowing what you're doing. You're applying for a very specific subject, and especially if you're going to Oxbridge, your job is to show that this subject is the reason you wake up in the morning, and that and you're justified in being interested in it because you are so good at it. So this is what you're trying to show. Nothing else really matters. One thing though, you can switch degrees. Tripos makes it somewhat easier. Tripos is basically, for law is divided into three tripuses, so you can switch at any point to a different subject. This is very Cambridge specific. I don't think that's how it works in Oxford because they only have sort of one or two exams. I don't know, but yeah, you can switch, but it's definitely much harder than in the U.S. So for law specifically, just for those who are sort of interested in that, it is English and Welsh law, but you can, at a later point in your academic career, choose modules like comparative law and international law and human rights. It revolves around essays and problem questions, which I think is normal for law degrees. There are incredible amounts of reading, which you cannot possibly get through. This is sort of a well-known fact among the students, is the workload is truly exceptional. Yeah. There is no way around it. Yeah, like if you are coming to Cambridge, be prepared to suffer greatly, I suppose. And yeah, another thing, the style of lectures is very different than in the U.S., like especially in terms of law degrees. So it is way less adversarial. It is, it would be very unusual for professors to sort of try and ask questions, especially in some sort of in interrogative way. So it's focused on your learning rather than constantly questioning whether you are sufficiently capable. Another extremely important point about Cambridge are the academics. They are an extremely valuable treasure. They are so knowledgeable and so inspiring. All of them are at the top of their fields, and you get to actually spend time with them almost one-on-one. So for instance, I had altogether over 16 hours of one-on-one time with one of the top constitutional lawyers in the UK, the chair of Cambridge Law Faculty, who advises House of Lords of the UK on constitutional issues. And you get to ask very, very specific questions. You get to ask how to interpret the textbook you wrote, which is the foundational text for the whole course. And this applies to all subjects that you will be able to study there. It's also incredibly rich. While compared to the Ivy League, Cambridge's wealth seems less impressive. It is the richest university in Europe, and well, basically it's the richest university in the world apart from the U.S. And in the U.S., the only competing universities are the likes of Harvard. So yeah, we've got about at least 19 billion in endowment, but obviously that figure is understated because of the incredibly difficult way of assessing most of the university's property. But this is important because it translates into incredible amounts of support, both academic and pastoral. You can get funding for a lot of things. This is very college specific though, because most of wealth is held by colleges. But you can get grants for travel. You have access to fantastic facilities. You have access to any book you could possibly want, because Cambridge has one of the two libraries of record, or whatever they're called, and any book published in the UK has to be sent there by law. So you can literally find any book that you need, which I can't say about many universities. Another thing is that you have very different peers. So I went to an extremely academic high school. So I thought I would not be particularly thrown by Cambridge's folks. Yet they do manage to impress you no matter where you come from. It is a very vibrant community of extremely passionate individuals, often of very, very impressive intellect. And it is truly impressive sometimes. The backbone of the academic experience, especially for not just for undergraduates, for everyone in Cambridge, are the supervisions, which is basically tailored, almost one-on-one education. And colleges they confuse a lot of people. And to be fair, I was confused by them as well. But they are those sort of community and pastoral hubs. They're responsible for your pastoral care. They're responsible for your supervisions, for your accommodation, and for most of your funding if you require some. It is important to choose your college wisely because it really determines your social experience, not academic. Um, yeah, and oh, another thing, since we are, I suppose, quite international, the international community in Cambridge is very big and it's very sort of well organized. You can find a society for any sort of ethnic or cultural group, and yeah, it is really, they are generally very nice folk to be around. So yeah, I think this is pretty much
Thanks for all the
it for
info,
me.
Roman.
Yeah, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask.
Yes, please be sure you can either raise your hand or send a message in the chat if you have any questions for Roman. Oh, we already have some questions coming in. Um, First of all, I had a question for you before we moved on to questions, give people some time. You said that people who go to your university need to be very focused on their academics and have a passion to wake up every day and work on what they're working towards. What's your passion?
Mm.
What is pushing you every day to work so hard? It seems like a very high stress environment.
Well, for me, it's dual. And this is not the case for many people. So for a lot of folks in Cambridge are purely driven by their academic interests. I am deeply passionate about law. It is a fantastic subject, I think extremely important to, well, not just extremely important to, but fundamental to society. So for me, it is a genuine intellectual pleasure to be involved, to be engaged with it in any way. But also, law is a very respectable degree, which opens a lot of doors. So, and I am very career driven. So, yeah, this definitely does help. But if you don't like your subject, there is no way you will get through 3 years of Cambridge. You will go mad.
We got a question from Brandon Jackson, and he's asking about the admission process to Cambridge. So how would you describe the process, and did it require frequent visits to campus and contact with faculty? How did that all look like?
Okay, so obviously this is undergraduate experience. I do not know how graduate experience works, but undergraduate experience involves around sort of, you have to apply through UCAS, which is the UK sort of central system for university applications. You submit a personal statement in which you relay why you've chosen law. And personal statement you submit it for every university you're applying to in the UK, and it's the same for each university. But if you're applying to Cambridge, it has to be profoundly academic. So my personal statement, although it's called personal statement, contains about 2 lines about me personally. It is purely my thoughts on the law. Very well, to the extent you are capable of producing deep thoughts, very deep thoughts, in the sense that you haven't studied law. So obviously the standard is understandably lower than if you have studied it. Then you need a certain certain level of grades, which varies from system to system. But for instance, for A levels, it's A star a minimum. For law, varies from subject to subject slightly. You get 2 interviews, which are purely academic as well. There is nothing about you in them. So for instance, for law, you get two sort of pieces of reading. One is a judgment that you need to summarize and discuss the merits of it. And mind you, you have not studied law by this point, but you need to be able to do this. And then you are given an excerpt from a statute, sort of a definition of an offense, and a set of factual scenarios which do not have easy answers to. They are specifically chosen sort of to have controversial answers. Yeah. Oh,
So it looks like
sorry.
a very different process from the American process where
Yeah.
a lot of extracurricular and personal statements and your personality play a big role as well versus just pure academics.
Yes. Yes.
I was just going to say, we have Zia Clemens asking a question. She says, what does a typical day look like for you on campus?
So, well, it starts with lectures, which vary from subject to subject. Some people have lectures from 9 to 5. I usually have about 3 lectures a day. And then most of your day you just spend reading independently. You always have reading lists that you haven't done. and you're reading and you're trying to understand it, and you always have an essay to write, so you have to produce that. So yeah, it's basically, it's if you're doing it right, you're at least from Monday to Friday, your life is dominated by the academic stuff. You have to be extremely efficient in your work to be able to have a social life.
All right. Well,
This is not to say that social life in Cambridge is dull. It is actually fantastic because if you get into Cambridge, you are more likely to be very efficient. So we do have a great social life.
all right. Well, Roman, thank you so much for telling us about your Cambridge experience. Anna?
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
And we would like to welcome Anastasia, a social and political science student, to share her academic and career experience at UCL. Please take the floor, Anastasia.
Okay, I managed to unmute myself. Cool. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, as Anna just said, my name is Anastasia. I'm also from Ukraine. And at the moment, I study in University College London. Since Roman already talked quite a bit about academic stuff, I will try to concentrate a bit more on careers because the system of kind of academic studies in the UK is quite similar in different universities. You would be, as Roman mentioned, you would be required to go to a few lectures per day, and then most of the other time, if you're doing a social science degree, you would be just required to do reading in your own time. And what is very kind of characteristic of universities in London in general, and of life in London in general, is that the city is very fast-paced. No matter which university in London you're attending, you always feel this driven environment, a lot of people trying to get a lot of things done, a lot of motivated, skilled individuals, and you instantly feel competition. So first of all, of course, you have to try and do your best to study well, but that is something that in UCL, my university, and actually quite a few universities in London, sometimes becomes a second thing. Because people who come especially for master's subjects, for bachelor's mostly as well, they would be very career oriented. And you would feel that right when you come to the first freshers fair as a new student at UCL. So I try to kind of collect some information for you to know before you come to a London university if you're applying to one. It doesn't matter whether it's going to be a master's program or a bachelor's, because you just have to be prepared for this kind of fast-paced environment and for the things that are going to be thrown at you right when you arrive. So first of all, as I said, UCL is a huge collaboration of different degrees, and it is the most international university in the UK. We have about 45% international students, which means that it is quite welcoming to people from other countries. It is one of the largest universities by population. We have about 40,000 people, and that's a huge number of people you can meet, network with. With regards to master's applications, I'm not as sure about the process, but what I know is that normally the deadline for submitting your master's application would be the 1st of July. And it would be either 1 year or 2 years, depending on the type of master's that you choose. It might be a master's where you would be taught, so it's a taught master's, or a research master's where you would write a project. So depending on that, the application process would differ a bit. And if someone is interested in that, I can send the relevant links to Anna, and then she can distribute that in your society. Another thing about UCL, and I'm trying to cover a lot of things, so stop me if I go over the time. Another thing, yeah. When you come to UCL, and in general to London, as a student, you have to be ready to either be an extroverted person or to become an extroverted person, because you're thrown into an environment where there are thousands, millions of people, and everyone seems to know what they're doing. And at some point, you might feel like you're a bit lost and like you don't have the right place there for you. But that's a misconception. That's something that pretty much every single student who comes from abroad feels, and it's completely normal. So my advice for this is just talk to people, especially when you just come, whether that is going to be a master's program or just a bachelor's program. You're going to have an induction week or 2 weeks of induction. Make an effort and try to meet as many people as you can at that point, because this induction exists for the very purpose of people understanding that we come together to meet each other, and everyone has this purpose at this particular event. So it's not as frightening to like come up to a person and ask for their Instagram or something. So it's completely normal, and that's how you can start talking to people. You can start finding out about different degrees. You can start building friendships, and from that, you can start growing your networks. I would like to highlight that trying to grow your network is one of the most important things that you can do while being at a university in general, and especially at a university in London and at a university like UCL, because there are people from all over the world. Most of the people, so about 80%, would go to high-level fields of and different industries like consulting, law, finance. They are going to be highly successful people, public policy and administration as well. And they're going to be highly successful people. And if you start working on your connections, and I would say more like friendships right now, you are going to have a very strong network towards the end of your master's degree or when you start your career. So that is another thing. With regards to facilities, I know that interests people in general. For master's students, you're going to be allowed to have an accommodation, like a place at a student's accommodation. And that is something that is quite specific to UCL, because most universities offer accommodation only for bachelor's degrees and only for the first year. So you can still have university accommodation. If you need any advice on that, I can also send the relevant information if anyone has questions about that. With regards to renting flats, when you start looking for a place, once you already got there, got an offer, it shouldn't be later and earlier than 3 months, because the real estate market is really quick in London. So 3 months in advance, that should be fine. That's with regards to living in general in London. It is quite expensive. You have to be ready for that. That's just life for students in London. Then with regards to student life, we have about 300 or more career societies in UCL. So actually not just career societies. It ranges from a bubble tea society with 30 members to the UCL Guild, which is a society that I'm leading right now, and it has about 4,000 members and it's related to careers. So you can find people who are kind of interested in the same thing as you, no matter how weird that thing is, like really bubble tea, honestly, but there is a society for that. And then, of course, for careers and for being successful at UCL, in London in general, of course, you have to be academically strong. Once you get into UCL, that's kind of the expectation that you're going to work hard. But then also, depending on different master's types, you can have other experiences within your degree. So you would have a general kind of major or your research project, and then you would have an opportunity to get a selective module either in another department or in another university that is located closely to UCL. For example, it could be SOAS, which is related to social sciences. It could be another university as well, like Birkbeck. For very specific modules, such as like cultural modules that are not provided at UCL. And also you could have an opportunity to study a language at the UCL-run language school, which is called CEAS. So that is something quite interesting to take into account. Again, what I would like to highlight with regards to career prospects, UCL is the ultimate place for networking. So use it wisely. You can use this not only in UCL. That's the beauty of it. When you're a student at UCL, you are a student of the University of London, which is kind of collaboration of 5 or 6 different universities in London. So it would include SOAS, King's, probably LSE, I'm not so sure, but it would include quite a few universities in London. And that means that you can go to their events, you can visit their libraries, you can go to the LSE library, for instance, go to a talk given by someone at LSE, at King's, you can network with people there. You can engage in student society activities that bring together different societies, for instance, and different universities. For instance, right now at my society, I'm working on a collaboration with the Oxford Consulting Society. And you can meet people who are studying at Oxford who are probably going to go into a consulting career, but you can already do that by being a student at UCL. So it's something to bear in mind. And also in general, when you try to use LinkedIn as a way to grow your network, if you are reaching out to people, and especially senior people at different firms, and saying that you're a student at University College London or another London university which is well known, you are much more likely to get a response, and people are much more likely to devote time to you because they know that you have potential, that you are probably going to be really interested in what that person is doing, and that you actually are going to derive some value from that. So really use LinkedIn as well for the purposes of networking. Also about that, it's completely fine if people don't answer on LinkedIn. Some people are just really too busy. I got completely used to being ignored a lot of times, but actually after like 10 messages that people ignored, someone answers to you and you have a call with the senior partner at a consulting firm, and they just give you their time for free just to give you advice. So it's really a nice experience, and be persistent in reaching out to people. So with regards to careers, I can touch a bit, if that interests people in your society. I can touch a bit on consulting and banking because this is something that I've had exposure to during my first year at university. Most people in London universities are interested in a consulting or banking career. That's just a given. That often happens. What is interesting here is that it doesn't matter which degree you're pursuing, you can still apply to most banking and consulting internships and graduate positions. So say if you're pursuing a master's in English or Greek and Latin literature or something like that, you can still apply to a consulting internship or a finance position, so long as you have the personal traits that they're looking for, the motivation and the technical and mathematical skills needed, which you can develop by doing different courses online and by talking to professionals who can pinpoint what is it that you should develop while you still have time before applying to internships. So with regards to the process, it is quite difficult to explain it quickly. That's why if anyone has questions and I can provide my email, my LinkedIn, whatever, reach out to me. I can connect you with people who are already associates or junior members of different firms who would be happy to talk to you and tell you about their experience, about the application process, but I will try to cover it really briefly. So first of all of these large firms, for instance, my aspiration, MBB, which is McKinsey, Bain, BCG consulting firms, then large banks such as Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they all care about kind of the same things, and that would be your leadership skills, your teamwork skills, your motivation to work and to learn, then communication skills, that's very important, and your analytical mindset, which you can work on while you still have time before you come to, say, complete your master's program. What is also important is that most internship applications open in early September, and even though their deadlines are like January, it's really important to apply right after they open because they are going to be assessed on a rolling basis, which means that once you apply, they're going to start reviewing your application straight away. So you will have to try and apply in the first 2 weeks after the vacancy opens. Otherwise, the places might be filled by the end of the deadline, which is very important to remember. That's why it's better to prepare your CV and cover letter before you even come to university. And also, you will spare yourself the stress of kind of going to university, meeting new people, and trying to figure out what is it that you want to do as a career. Also, for consulting and banking, it is quite useful to try and get a summer associate or summer analyst role before going into graduate studies, because it is much more easy to get a summer associate role than a graduate role. And after you, for instance, went through a whole selection process to get a summer internship, which would normally last 10 weeks at a bank, say Goldman Sachs, if you performed really well during that internship, you are going to be automatically fast-tracked to a graduate position. That's why it's quite important to take that into account and try to apply for summer associate roles. And that is something I wanted to mention. Okay, let me see. Do I have any other things? Yeah, for applications in general, you would have to alter your CV a bit, because the way the CVs normally look in the UK are a bit different from the US and from Austria. So again, if this is something useful for you guys, I can send a template that we distribute in our society to Anna so that she can show you what a CV regularly would look like, especially for banking and consulting. With regards to applications, normally for summer internships and graduate roles, there would be several rounds of interviews. For consulting, it would be consulting cases, so business cases where you have to solve a problem. I'm not so sure about finance. I haven't done that. So keep that in mind. It takes a lot of preparation. There are quite a few resources that you can use. I can name some. If they don't make any sense to you, you can just ask Anna later. But there is Prep Lounge for consulting, and Victor Cheng, who is a former McKinsey consultant who runs a lot of workshops related to preparing for consulting cases. So if that's something that interests you, check it out. If you want to learn about finance and you don't know as much about it as you would like before applying to a summer position, there is a new startup called Finance Unlocked, which is kind of a platform with a lot of courses related to finance, and they teach you with the video, and then they check your progress, check your understanding. And recently they provided a free membership to the society that I'm in, so I can share that with you as well. I'll try to find that. If I do, I will send it. Also, another thing with careers, and I'm almost done. I know I'm running over the time, but this is important. You can still do a lot of things related to careers, even though you are not attending in-person events, because we know that due to the current situation, it's quite difficult to manage and find an in-person event where you can meet HRs. So you can still do a lot for your CV. First of all, try to get some work experience. It actually doesn't matter which type of work experience at this point. So I got summer role at a consulting firm based on a kind of work experience that I had at university, which was producing a documentary. This is completely unrelated to consulting or finance, but I managed to show how my skills were transferable and how I solved problems, how I used my analytical skills when I applied there, and when I tried to make a film. So that is something to consider. Like, it doesn't matter which is your background, just make sure to present yourself well. Show that whatever experience you have matters, because it made you the person that you are right now. It makes you a very good fit for this role because you have these personal skills. With regards to political science, which I don't know as much about, but I do know that it's quite a popular discipline in Webster, so I'll finish with that. I know a bit about careers in politics and international relations. So one thing that I could suggest if you are thinking about going to London for either further studies or looking for a job, there is a research institute called Chatham House, which is a Royal Research Institute for Political Science and Economics. And they're kind of very high-level people. So you could, if you become a member, you can go to talks delivered by senior officials, by the WHO manager responsible for pandemic responses. Theresa May at some point gave her one of her last addresses in Chatham House. So it's that kind of high level. And at the same time, they run a lot of internships throughout the year. So they have an autumn intake and a summer intake. And that is also something worth checking out. It is quite useful to try and help out in your department if you're a master's student as a research assistant. If you want to pursue a career in international relations, that is quite useful. And in general, there are a lot of possibilities in London. You just have to be prepared to give it a go. Don't be afraid of mistakes, rejections. It happens. It's fine. It happens to everyone. And yeah, try to enjoy your time there. And if you have any questions, reach out. I'm done with my presentation on UCL. Yeah.
Thank you, Anastasia. We really appreciate all your knowledge, and being the president of a career-oriented society is you got lots of information that can be very useful to some of our members. Thank you. Oh, we have a question in already. Let me go through it. So how was the COVID-19 pandemic impacted your experience studying in London as a student from abroad? This is from Brandon Jackson.
Okay, Brandon. That's a very hurtful question, to be fair. So at first, we thought that it wouldn't affect us too much. And then we had to adjust to the closure of our university in the middle of our studies in term 2, which is in early March. And they closed the university. They really quickly transferred everything online. So I wouldn't say that the quality of the teaching was compromised in any way. What was also a change is that most of the students went back home. That was the case for me as well. And that was a bit stressful. It is very interesting how UCL approached the whole stress situation with regards to the virus, because they extended a lot of deadlines for master's students. For first years, they even canceled assessments, and they exchanged that by a capstone assessment, which is something where you just write an essay on a few topics related to what you studied in the year. So they're very understanding with regards to the chaos that this has caused, which is very, very nice of them. Also, with regards to how they're approaching the second year, I mean, my second year in university, so it's going to be this coming academic year. They are already preparing to have everything online in term 1. So it means that before Christmas holidays, everything should be available online. They're still going to host in-person seminars and tutorials, so it will be small group discussions. But everything is going to have an online alternative. So people who understand that it would be difficult for them to travel far away and rent a flat just to go to a couple of seminars per week, they can stay at home and do everything without compromising the quality of their education. It is a bit more difficult for technical degrees because they would have a lot of labs normally, so they would have to go and use equipment provided by university to conduct experiments. That's not the case for me, which is a Bachelor of Arts degree. So yeah.
And Anastasia, Zia asks that you mentioned that the city was fast-paced. Are there any major cultural shifts that you noticed when you started studying in the UK?
Well, as you just might have noticed, when I was trying to present all this information in 10 minutes, I didn't manage to do that, but I spoke really quickly. That's something that happens to you in London. Everything is so fast-paced that you have to adjust it. But then once you are in that atmosphere, it takes you about 1 to 2 months to kind of go with the flow of the city. You kind of become part of the city, become part of London, and it feels okay. So you shouldn't be resistant to the way the city is kind of changing you because it is going to help you adjust. What cultural differences? I would say it wasn't that big of a change for me because I studied in the UK for 2 years previously. So I already was a bit adjusted to having this international community around me. But for someone who is coming from a country like, for instance, Ukraine, where you are mostly surrounded by just Ukrainian people, it can be quite a change when you see people from all over the world, different interests, different views on political affairs, social affairs. It's something that you have to get used to. I quite like it because I see different viewpoints. I can contrast them and compare them, and I feel that it enriches me as well as a person. There are so many things that you can learn from others. So I would say it's a welcome change.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us, Anastasia. Anna?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And now we are happy to welcome Patricia Paulina Carver to share her academic background and experience. Please take the floor, Patricia.
Okay, hi everyone. I hope you hear me well. Just let me turn that off. I was thinking that it's probably best for you guys if I talk about my experience at Webster and how I came to be what I am today. I started studying in 2017 International Relations and Economics. And after that, in my first year, I did an internship in Brussels at the European Parliament. And then I immediately got recruited by PwC. Given that I was just 20 years old back then and a full-time student, I couldn't take like the entry position in European transfer pricing. So they kind of handed me over to an Austrian bank, which is like pretty big in Central and Eastern Europe. It's called Erste Bank Group AG, where I started with external communications. But then I had previously applied to the foreign ministry in Abu Dhabi, Tehran, and New York. All of them accepted me, and I have chosen New York because it was like the headquarters of the UN. So I interned there last year. So at that time, I actually wanted to do economic law and go more into that direction. However, I got the opportunity to take a 10-day program at MIT in Boston, where I really started to get into this whole artificial intelligence, tech, blockchain kind of thing, concentrated around public sector efficiency, which is also a big deal in consulting, like what Anna talked about. So this is kind of something going on that we hear all the time, how robots are going to take over or what's the future of AI, also in law and in other disciplines. So it's like technically covering every sector that you're going to be employed in the future. So for me, it was something that I really wanted to contribute towards and also to dig a bit deeper. So by myself, I really got into programming and also the theoretical part behind it, how we can make society more efficient, but also in terms of cost, but also for human interaction in our daily lives, which is the main topic of my bachelor thesis, where we're not going to talk about further because it's a bit complicated. But never mind. So what I did was that I first planned to do the early admissions procedure for an MBA at MIT. However, in my entire undergrad studies, I was working part-time, as I said, in the banking industry. And in summer, I was doing my internships. I was the Secretary General of Webster United Nations. I have a leading position in a political party, and I'm also very eager to have very good grades. So the whole GMAT thing really didn't work out with studying and everything. And I admit that completely honestly and entirely, that I was sitting there at 10 a.m. I was calling my mom. I was like, okay, should I write an essay? Should I do this project planning? Should I study for GMAT? I'm not that good in quants. That was the reason I was breaking down on the math part. So I was like kind of really screwing it over. So what happened was that I had already applied to LSE and UCL, and my family said, first of all, you do not need to own the world. And second of all, if you're not taking a GMAT now, there is a still future ahead. I'm 23 years old right now, just to mention that. So I kind of stopped studying for the GMAT and just waited what is going to happen with my other applications. And what happened was that COVID-19 just all of a sudden appeared. So I was back at home in Salzburg, still working home office and also finishing my classes. And I got a job offer at the bank where I'm currently employed. The thing is that they wanted me to do digitization and relationship management in Austria, but why do you attend an international university if you keep on working in Austria? Kind of doesn't make sense, right? So I was telling them that nice idea, but So in, I think, April, I got the offer from UCL for an MPA in public policy and advanced new emerging technologies. I think that's what they call it. It's from the STEM department. It's very based on engineering, very based on tech, with a very deep scientific background. And then a couple of weeks later, I got the offer from LSE in management of information systems and digital innovation. So now there's the question, why did I choose LSE over UCL? I mean, I'm not going to lie, LSE in terms of management and social sciences ranked second in the world after Harvard, and I'm sorry, Roman, before Oxford and Cambridge. So that was really a determinant for my choice. And until now, I'm quite content. Some questions that probably some of you are asking right now, how is the whole situation going to look like? With the pandemic, are we able to get on campus? How are lectures going to look like? What they told us is that the seminars are going to be in-house. We also are going to have access to the library, but lectures are going to be streamed online. So that was my Webster experience summed up. And the thing about Webster is that especially if you're currently a student, it really depends on you. They give you all of the resources that you can imagine. If it is to attend international conferences, if it is to take part in extracurricular activities. I myself, during my undergrad studies, also already did master classes because I demonstrated my academic abilities in other undergrad classes, so they even offered it to me if I want to join an upper level for studying. Engaging with your professors is extremely important. The directors are highly supportive. They provide you recommendation letters. If you need employment advice, that's also something. And something that I can't emphasize enough is you have to go out there and ask people, because people always think that you need a certain connection in order to get a job. This is not true. You just need to apply and then wait what happens, because if you work hard enough and have a very diverse skill set to offer, then they're going to take you in. They're not going to care in the first moment if it's the most prestigious university. Of course, it really, really matters. But in your undergrad, if you study at Webster, you just need to go out there and have both the extracurricular background, but also the grades, and best case, also the working experience. That this is quite demanding, yes, but for myself, I really liked my time at Webster. I had a lot of leisure. I really have a big group of friends. It doesn't appear when I talk about my CV because it always seems a bit cringe, but yeah. So, yeah, that is just my recommendation. Also, LinkedIn, super important. Just talk to people, tell them about your interests, what you want to do in the future, even if it's just a passion and something that you have in common. It's really a big breaking point to be courageous and also open-minded, to engage, and also to connect with people from other universities, and also admit to yourself if you're not the best in something. This is something that for me is very important, that if you know your weaknesses, then you can really foster your strengths. And everybody has a different skill set. So if you are the strategic, general, amazing mind, then respect that somebody might have a different skill set when it comes to quantitative or finance structures. And if you pair up, then you can really make something great happen. And this is, nobody of us is perfect, and you can be the student with the honors and everything. I know it's so great, and your parents are proud, and everybody's just like, yeah, wow. Nevertheless, out there, we all have different skill sets. So that was something that I had to learn, and also to admit to myself that we just benefit from one another instead of like entering competition for nothing that really matters. Yeah, that was my speech.
Thank you so much, Patricia. We really appreciate it, especially coming from someone who's been to Webster University and can speak from that experience and how that served as a jumping board for going to other universities. Because at least for myself, sometimes I feel that is my choice of going to Webster University going to affect me in the future because it's not one of the best universities in the United States, but also.
I mean, it definitely is. Like, it's always affecting your future, what you're choosing.
But how did you feel that going to Webster University helped you to get to the British University?
Actually, in my first week at Webster, I talked to my advisor, and he told me that if I work hard enough, I would be able to get into Stanford. So I told him he's kind of crazy because I come from a very small country village in Austria, like with cows and horses and everything. So I was like telling him, I'm not going to Stanford. This is really a joke. Actually, Harvard asked me if I want to study with them. So it kind of turns out it is possible. So what is the thing that you just need to be eager enough. And of course, it affects you, the opinions also in Austria, because private universities are not as prestigious regarded as a public universities, but that is also kind of a mindset which diverges between Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and also the States. It's just something that is not quite common, especially in Austria. And then I think that also what Roman said, you really have to be passionate. If people realize that you really like what you do and you're really into that, then they will support you. Because if you just have an attitude in class and do not contribute and they don't see, that sounds a bit like tragically stated, the fire in you and what you're doing, then they're not going to support you. But if you demonstrate that, then you can take that opportunity and you will always reach out to people with open arms. And that's really something that I experienced. I mean, I encountered certain situations where it was all a bit too much for me. And I'm not really used to failures. Like, by now I am, but I wasn't in the past. So I had professors telling me that I'm not a worse human just if I can't solve that equation in a PhD paper in economics. And I was like, why? It doesn't make me, no, because for me it was just weird because I was really disappointed by myself. But this is something that you learn over time, and it's a soft skill. So yeah, it really depends on you. So I went to Warwick with Webster, for example, and I met the nicest people from Cambridge and LSE, but also Science Po, and you connect, you make friends, and this is how this entire community just evolves. And like exchanging thoughts and agendas with bright minds is just one of the most amazing things that I ever got to experience.
Well, thank you so much. We have Brandon Jackson asking if you could describe what kind of faculty and staff you worked with at Webster, and if you feel comfortable going to them for advice, for career advice.
Definitely. So first of all, I have to admit that I'm a big fan of Dr. Schubert and Dr. Pollack because they are just like the best guys that I had through my undergrad career. They really supported me. And also my advisor was Ralf Schöllhammer, who happened to have like the same economic interest as me, which was like very great math from the start of my studies. And he also always helped me like going over my essays, if I applied to certain institutions, no matter if it would be like with reference to academia or in a professional field, then also letters of recommendation. You can talk like Ronald Hochreiter, I think is his name. He is like teaching R and statistics at Webster. He, for example, collaborated with the banking group that I'm employed at. So he also modeled a new program with me and really supported me in my ideas when it comes like to innovation and how to make something more efficient. You can approach almost all of the professors. They just have to match your expectations. Like you can't go to Dr. Pollack and talk with him about behavioral economics because he's not going to have an answer to that. That's just something. But if you want to talk about European integration theory, then you can go to him. I had a very intense phase with Middle Eastern politics, where I was really passionate about that, especially into social and female movements. So I worked a lot with Dr. Schubert on that term. Then for philosophy students, Ryan is great. For the finance background, and especially also when it comes to sustainability or environmental issues, green banking initiatives, Dr. Punzi, also great address. So you don't have to figure out what you want, I mean, at that point in your undergrad studies. But if you feel there's something that really interests you in that moment, then just approach them, and they can really widen your horizon and also provide you with material in no matter what field.
Thank you. And our last question comes from Zia, and she asked if there are any specifically Webster opportunities that you would recommend to us.
WebMoon, of course. That's something.
For our U.S. campuses, so can you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yes. Vienna is the headquarters to one of the United Nations offices, and especially for international relations students, the Vienna campus is very well suited because you have the connections, you have the OECD, you also have the Office of the World Bank, so that really makes sense to study international relations in that environment. So if you want to join WebMoon, it's an international conference hosted annually after the midterm week in October, and you get to choose a committee and represent a certain country, and then debate on behalf of the advances and also interests of that country. So that is something that I definitely would recommend for everyone who has an economics, law, international relations, psychology, political science background. Also for business students, if you're interested in that field. I have a lot of friends who studied management or international business, however, are now employed at the UN. It's just like really depends how you direct your path in your career and what you want to do. Maybe going back also to what Anna said about consulting in the UK, I also experienced that every student who happens to study in the UK is just knocking at the door of BCG and McKinsey, and I don't get it why, because there's so many great opportunities out there. Also, my fellow students now, whom I'm going to enter in fall, they all talk about that, and for me, it's a very interesting field. Nevertheless, if you really have the intention of having an impact, not only in a business sense, but maybe also in a socio-political and also economic sense, and you want to work for an international institution, you can really do a lot with that. Like, consulting is not the only career path for our generation. I think it's just very important to state that for everyone out there. Nevertheless, it's a great opportunity. I have friends working in that field. Maybe myself it happens one day. I don't know. We will see. But yeah. Warwick Economic Summit, also highly recommended. I've been there for 2 consecutive years. We didn't visit Bloomberg, but I think they do that now. Also go to the recruiting of Bloomberg. I have a lot of friends who kickstarted their career with that. If you're interested in financial matters, really also no matter what you studied, you can be a psychology student and still work as a financial analyst. At these companies, they value the diversity of bright minds, which I think is really, really great. And with Eastern European background in Vienna, the big bank groups like Raiffeisen International, Erste Bank, they really have a great setup, and you can go from Hong Kong to New York City to Romania, no matter where, just once you have one foot in the door.
Thank you so much, Patricia.
From the bottom of our hearts, we would like to thank you all for being with us today and for sharing your experience and knowledge. We are sure that success is an outcome of hard work and courage, and also we are sure that Webster students could definitely achieve their aims and goals when working hard.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Stay tuned for the rest of our summer series going through July. On July 11th, we will be talking about career opportunities in the U.S. Foreign Services with Amanda Johnson, the diplomat in residence at the U.S. State Department. The next week, we will be hosting an event on the 18th of July which will be dedicated to job prospects in the EU delegation to international organizations, with press attaché Alain Georges Maton and his trainee Alexander Alphonse. And the following week, on July 24th, we'll be talking about careers in international civil service and international law and the United Nations experience. And that'll be on July 24th with Magdalena Kopal, who's working at the International Tribunal to Lebanon, and Christina Carey, who is the HR Director and Change Management at the Special Tribunal to Lebanon, and she has experience in the UN. So please join us for those events, and we hope to see you soon.
And if you haven't yet, please join our social media pages. And also, we have an update to you. Soon, our website will be launched, and we will inform our members. So stay tuned for that, and we hope to see you soon in our upcoming events. And so we see each other soon, and have a good evening, and goodbye.
Thank you to all the speakers, and thank you to the attendees for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.